Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 144 of the Revive Yourself podcast. Here we go.
Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? Have you got a health issue that just won't go away no matter what you try? Then welcome to the Revive Yourself podcast, where we reveal the secrets to long-lasting health by getting to the root cause of problems that no one else is talking about. So you can have more energy, clear skin, healthier hair, a leaner physique, more confidence, and most importantly, do the things you love and live the life you deserve. Here's your host, Ryan Martin.
So guys and girls, welcome to episode 144 of the Revive Yourself podcast. Hope you're all good, and I hope you're still on the January vibe. I hope you're all sticking to any New Year's resolutions that you made, and you're well on the way to having a healthy 2020 and kicking ass and getting to the goals you want. And if you're not, ask yourself why. What's been going on? How can you get back on the saddle? Remember, it's not what you do every now and again that matters. It's what you do the majority of the time. So don't beat yourself up. And as Peter Crone says, everything that's happened up until now was supposed to happen exactly in that way. So don't worry about it too much and just get on with doing the best you can from now on. I had some great feedback on the episode last week with Phil Escott. That was 2 weeks ago. I got a message saying how much people enjoyed that episode, and also with Brian Hoyer last week. Yeah, got lots of messages through on that. So if you are looking for any advice in terms of blocking the EMF and wireless radiation in your house, then definitely go back to episode 143 and head over to shieldedhealing.com. And if you mention that, if you want anything done, you mention Revive and our podcast, and you're going to get 5% off there of anything that Brian offers. Also, if you haven't already seen my book, The Chronic Fatigue Solution, is now out. You can get it at www.thechronicfatiguesolution.com. That's www.thechronicfatiguesolution.com. So if you've been dealing with a chronic illness and you haven't been able to overcome it, and you want to actually look at ways where you get to the root of it rather than just burn, cut, poison, the way the medical route do it, never gets to the root cause of anything, then this book will give you the three big secrets to health and healing any chronic illness, as well as other protocols and principles, and 52 things you can do today, straight away, that'll improve your energy, your vitality, and your health. And it's only £7, the book. I don't even get any money for it. I'm just literally wanting this information to get out to you, just because I want people to be able to understand that they can heal themselves, and they don't have to live in pain. It's literally £7 for postage and packaging. And there's also an option there to buy the audio version if you want to, if you want the audio version. Some people prefer to listen than they do read, which is absolutely fair enough. And if you have got the book, then please send an image of yourself. Well, first of all, let me know, write a review and let me know what you think of it, the big takeaways that you've got from our book. But also, if you can, with the hashtag, the Chronic Fatigue Solution, that's hashtag Chronic Fatigue Solution, send a picture on Facebook or Instagram, for a chance to win our, a free 21-day health reset, at the end of the month that I'll be giving out. So yeah, please do that, and been getting lots of great reviews from the book, and people have really been enjoying it. So if you got any feedback, please let me know what you think of the book, and any big takeaways you've been having. As always, you can head on over to the Revive Yourself shop. Go to www.reviveyourself.co, and the shop there for products and supplements, high quality, that we have there. If you go to the Evolution Organics link, I always talk about Living Fuel being the best all-round product on the market by none in terms of the super greens and the super berry. We've got liver supporting products there. We've got great stuff from Ancient Purity too in the Royal Jelly. Very, very powerful immune booster. Everything from pearl powder for your face in terms of getting rid of blemishes. You can even have it internally, which is great. We've got our whole house water filtration systems from Aquitaire. If you've got 1, 2, 3 or 4 bed house there, hard or soft water, we've got options for you. Like even the most expensive one's £700 and it lasts like 10 years and it gets rid of 99% of all impurities in the water. We've got fantastic products from the Finchley Clinic in terms of our gut healing bundle there. And we're going to be adding some stuff from our guest today, who is Wade Lightheart from Bioptimzers.net or bioptimzers.co.uk or .co.uk, I should say. But he's actually got a great, put a great offer for our listeners today, which is fantastic. 15% off all of their products if you put in the code. If you put in the code on the UK site, if you go to www.bioptimzers.co.uk and you put in the code Revive15, you get 15% off all of their products. And if you go to bioptimzers.net for anyone in the rest of the world, and you put the code in ReviveUS15, you get 15% off all the products there. And Wade is an expert in digestion and nutrition. He's a former 3-time bodybuilding champion, and it's a fascinating conversation. We go into digestion, digestive issues, why people have these problems, detoxification, his reasons for getting involved in this. So it's a great conversation. I can't wait to get it out to you. So without further ado, here's Wade. Enjoy the show, and I'll see you on the other side. Busy, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we're on a pretty fast rocket ride right now. So the days are packed full of lots of stuff, but that's a good thing.
I can imagine. Since I think I first come across your stuff, it must have been about 6 to 8 months ago. I think it was, pretty sure it was Ben Greenfield talking about how he was having some of your Gluten Guardian products. And then I was like, all right. And then I saw you again on, I think it was, who else was taking it? Everyone I looked at, I was like, right, this stuff must be good. So I was like, I need to check this out, and checked it out. Then I think Paul obviously had you on as well. Paul Check had you on.
Oh yeah, you connected with Paul Check. That's great.
Yeah,
he's an amazing dude.
Yeah, he's been on here. He's been on our podcast twice. Once you get Paul going, he doesn't really stop. So it's wicked.
He's a bit of a savant in his knowledge. I mean, have you ever been to his house and seen his library?
No, I'm going to try and get out there this August. But a lot of my Mike Salim, a lot of my Nick Rebecca have been out there. Like his Heaven House, it's meant to be epic.
Probably the best collection as a health library I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, and he knows all of it.
He's
someone which is exceptional. You know,
he's someone like he's got as you said, like a wide range of knowledge, which is because, as he said, trying to heal the injuries or illnesses that everyone else couldn't fix. He's had to go into not just obviously nutrition, but the mind, religion, such a broad spectrum of things, which I think is fantastic. I'm very, very close with one of his master or level 4 coaches, Warren Williams, who's been on the show as well, and talking to them, it's fascinating. It's really weird because I'm not actually a Czech professional myself, but it was funny because how I got into what I do is because I was ill myself, and I actually went around and ended up in America and spoke to quite a few different doctors and healers, etc., and went to Thailand and in India. And it was, when I spoke to Paul, it was like he had put all those things together, and I was like, right, it makes sense. Yeah. And so it was a really your conversation with him was brilliant, and it was a long one because there's so much to talk about. But it was because, you've obviously got a great story anyway, which I want to get into, but it's really interesting to me that the products that you've produced, your Bioptimzers, in terms of just like, there's different enzymes on the market and there's different probiotics on the market, but what also fascinated me was what I actually saw them do. I think that you're the only company that has put a video out there of literally them digesting meat and different things, and I was like, right, that's quite like out there. It's radical because most people don't do that, and so to see it actually at work was like fascinating. So obviously I want you to do most of the talking here because you've got lots to say, but wait, just for people out there, how did you like get into this side of things? Like, what is your sort of background?
So are we rolling right now, or
we're rolling?
Okay, perfect. Cool. Cut that out. Well, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's really great to be here today. And I thank you for I checked out your site and looked at all your stuff. I love what you're doing. So I guess my biggest passion is connecting with other experts like yourself and people who are spreading a message of health, of healing, of optimizing one's physiology in today's world. I think it's an important message. So I think that's the primary drive. And that all originated essentially when I was 15 years old. And for those who don't know the story, basically, three things happened to me that kind of shaped the course of my life. My parents moved from a small village to a no village. Basically, it was 5 miles to my nearest neighbor in the middle of the woods. We were the caretakers of a private resort, which was beautiful, but not someplace I wanted to be as a 15-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Taken away from my friends, taken away from my community, taken away from a lot of the things that I wanted. But that gave me a lot of time to be quiet and to reflect and to be in nature, which, looking backwards, as difficult as that was, that probably set me up to think about things at an early age. Second thing that happened at almost the same time, my sister was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, which is a form of cancer of the lymph nodes, and I watched her go through the medical model over 4 years before she died at the untimely age of 22. So she was 4 years my senior, and so at 15, I was, subjected to this experience where all of a sudden, your life isn't a guarantee. Your health isn't a guarantee. And I watched her go from a very powerful athlete to just waste away to be, a skeleton and eventually dead. And I remember as she was going through the medical model, and she would be taking chemotherapy, and we'd have to drive her from the hospital. It was 55 miles, and she'd be getting sick from the treatment. We'd have to stop 3 or 4 times so she could vomit after she did her chemotherapy. And I thought, this just doesn't make sense to me. In my very naive 15, why is the treatment making you ill? And I know that was very crude, but that question drove me. That question really drove me. And I
think it's a great question.
It is. And, unless those situations had have happened, would I have had the time or the motivation or the drive, the emotional pain to drive me to carry that through in life? And then the third thing that happened is around the same time, this all happened within a couple of months. My sister had given me a bodybuilding magazine with Troy Zucolato on the cover. We just won Mr. California with 2 pretty girls in bikinis and all that sort of stuff. And, driven mad with testosterone, as most 15-year-old guys said. I was like, okay, I bought the Joe Weider Life. Maybe if I get those muscles, I might be able to attract these type of girls in my life. And so I went about building a gym in my barn. So this is very Rocky style, sawhorses, pulleys, 2-wheelers under tractor tires, you name it, and a little York barbell set that I had to purchase from mail order, if you will, and wait a month to get it, and then bring it home and then assemble my little bench and all this sort of stuff. And I started training and reading Arnold Schwarzenegger books. And he said something that was really powerful. He said, look, you can achieve anything in your life if you have a positive attitude, you're willing to work hard, and you have self-discipline. And that was not a message that was communicated to me in my community or anything around me or anything else. And I bought into that program hook, line, and sinker. And I just started training, went to university, studied exercise physiology. And then after I got out of that, I found that was a composite of information, but there was no unified, there was no direction with it. It was like, okay, here's how your kidneys work, or here's how your blood system works, or here's how your muscular system, but there was no connection to everything. There was no unifying principles. And so I started looking about that myself. And over the course of the next 15 years, I was pursuing bodybuilding still, and got to represent my country at the Mr. Universe contest in 2003, which was a lifelong dream of mine. But after that contest, I gained 42 pounds of fat and water in 11 weeks. I went from Mr. Universe to Mr. Marshmallow. And I remember thinking to myself, and I'm sure your listeners can relate to this, wait a second, I'm following everything I'm supposed to do. I've got the best coach in the world. I'm following the diet. I'm training like a madman. I've spent my entire life doing this. What happened? And fortunately, I've met a doctor who was in his 70s. He had just phenomenal energy. You could look right through your eyes. He was bright. He was vibrant. He was strong. And he was so cognizant. And I met him and I said, obviously this guy. And I said to him, what am I doing wrong? Like, I don't get it. And he said something to me that will change my life. He said, Wade, you've learned to build the body from the outside in. You haven't learned to build the body from the inside out. And it just hit me. And it just hit me. And the number one thing that we worked on is we started using enzymes and probiotics and minerals and essential elements and these things to rebuild my health. And in 6 months, I recaptured my physique. I wasn't tired. I didn't have achy joints. My brain functioning was better than ever. My skin was starting to shine instead of that pale gray kind of thing that happens when you're, on these kind of hardcore diets. And the bottom line was, I never looked back after that moment. And I've been on a mission ever since. We've coached now. Back then, we had coached about 15,000 people to get a lot of data. And now we're well over 50,000 people that we've worked with. And we're still on that mission of telling people, look, what you put in your mouth is not inside your body. It's how you absorb, digest, and utilize that food is going to determine whether you get those energy units or those building blocks to your body. And if you're not having as much energy as you want, or you're not feeling as vital as you want, chances are the first place you got to look is your digestion.
Yeah, 100%. Well, yeah, I think it was Hippocrates, wasn't it, who said all health or disease starts in your gut, right? So
yeah, 2,500 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
How we knew that, I don't know.
Well, so much wisdom. I think back then we decided that we're smarter than all this ancient wisdom because we've got laptops and mobile phones, which it's funny how nature got us kick us in the face when we think we're smarter than it quite a lot. And some things I want to touch on there, right? Because I don't want to just skirt over them. Really interesting. First of all, that doctor, what was his name? Because
Dr. Michael O'Brien.
Dr. Michael O'Brien.
Yes.
Michael O'Brien. And it's really interesting because that was one of the quotes I actually picked out of your interview with Paul. And I was like, that exactly, it was like, I don't know if you know Donna Gates is.
I know Donna. Yeah, she's body ecology diet. She's been very successful in the field and done a lot of great work.
You're one of the only people I know who know her, and I'm like, how do people not know her? She's such a as you said, in the digestive world, she's huge, and she's one of the people always talking about building health from the inside out, which is really huge. And that, a lot of what you mentioned there, I don't want to skirt over it, was your sister, obviously 22 years old. That's no age at all. I myself lost my best friend. He was 17 at the time, and that's what kicked my body into emotional and chemical issues. That's helped me on my journey. And we scratch our own itch, and it's very similar to yourself with that. Now, like, did you, when you went to university and you were studying, was there any of you part of you that wanted to go into like medicine and sort of go into that? I think it's quite just an interesting question because, that must have been, I'm not here to give you a therapy session, but obviously that must have been quite a big thing to lose your sister at that age.
Oh, it was huge. And, I don't think I even understood the full impact for about 10 years later. So sometimes when you have a traumatic event like that, it shapes how your life view and your worldview and oftentimes your activities. And then, only when I got deeper into psychology, philosophy, and understanding the role of these things, and did I fully understand the impact that had on me. And, and I think that's really important in today's culture for people to understand is, look, the human condition is a difficult one. As I like to say, nobody gets out alive. Mm-hmm. Everybody is going to face tragedy in their life. Everybody's going to face loss. Some people are going to face more than others. And sometimes the conditions that we're subjected to are excruciatingly cruel. And the thing is what I've come to realize is everything that happens to us is actually an opportunity in disguise. And we can choose to be a victim of those circumstances, or we can choose to use those circumstances to catapult us to greatness. And that's a choice that everybody gets to make. And sometimes that choice is very difficult. But one of the dangers I think that's happened in, say, the last 20 years is that we've created a culture of victimhood and a culture of blame and a culture of not taking responsibility for everything in our life, even the things that are unfair, unjust, unequitable, whatever. And the reality is that's been the history of human beings. And if you look at the great influencers of life, whether it's Martin Luther King, which you just had Martin Luther King the other day, if you look at Nelson Mandela, if you look at Mahatma Gandhi, or you can go on down the list, it's people that took extraordinarily difficult circumstances and transformed them to make a difference in the world. And that's the model that I'd like to follow. That's the message I'd like to have in my own little way in this health world, because there's people out there suffering. There is people that are suffering from the dregs of the modern food production and distribution system. They're suffering from a lack of complete knowledge of understanding the physiology of what's happening in their body and the elements that can correct that. And at the bottom line is their greatness, their genius, their unlimited capacity is not being shared in the world because they have a physical ailment. And my goal is to reach out to those people and take their hand and say, hey, you know what? There is a better way to unlock your potential. First, let's get your health straightened out so that you can be you.
100%. And I mean, that's the whole reason I do this podcast, and the whole reason I do what I do as well. You know, as you said, like trying to tell people that there is another way. You don't, you know, I myself went through the medical industry and they almost destroyed me for 5 years. This is why I do what I do now, and say there is another way. You just have to, like, your body wants to be healthy. Its default setting is health. You just have to give it the right circumstances to do so. And once you get out of its way, it's amazing what can be done. And so I'm glad that, I mean, for my thing as yours, that what happened, although terrible at the time, I mean, I look back and say, well, I wouldn't be doing what I was doing now if I didn't go through it. And so, you know, and the knock-on effect that has, and all the people that I've helped, and the 50,000 people that you've helped, I mean, in the long run, it's, you know, it's amazing what good, still every cloud has a silver lining sort of thing, but, you know, it's horrible as those things have to go through. Sometimes they can be the best things that happen to us. Not the best things, but the most, you know, the things that a lot can come out of. So it's really interesting. You mentioned about getting into bodybuilding. At that young age, I think we all go through that. We see the magazines and how they look, and we think, oh, pretty girl. If I look like that, I'll get a pretty girl. But like, what was it about? Because I've heard you talk about you're a vegetarian now, correct?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Was you always a vegetarian? Were your mum and dad vegetarians?
No. I've been a plant-based for almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years next year. So 19 years I've been plant-based.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was there like, was your body just not doing well on meat, or was there a reason why you went vegetarian?
No, you know, so that's a great question, because for me, I grew up in, you know, if I believe that if there was no meat in the meal, there wasn't a meal kind of thing. You know, that's how we grew up. My mother did grow an organic garden. And then when I went to university, I started eating food that wasn't organic, and I could actually see the difference in my health, like my energy and stuff. And I was like, whoa, what's going on here? And that was my first clue. She was growing an organic garden long before it was cool or proper. We thought she was crazy, but then I started to see the wisdom of that. The second thing is we also ate a lot of game, wild game. We lived in the woods. We hunted, we fished. My uncle would produce cows. We'd get cows from him, and you know, they just were grass-fed cows. Like, no one thought of all these kind of things and hormones and all these sorts of, like, very, very rural, natural type of living. And then I got subjected into the regular world, if you will, to the modern food production, and I noticed the difference. But what happened in 2000, I went through a massive, I would say, life crisis, and out of that, I got into meditation. And after about 6 months, I read a book from my teacher's teacher. It was called The Holy Science by a fellow by the name of Swami Sri Yukteswar. And he wrote out this whole book about the dietary practices that were best suitable for meditation based on nervous system response, salivary response, type of our teeth, the size of our digestive canal. And it was a pretty darn good argument. So I said, you know, I'm going to experiment with this for 2 weeks. I'm going to go plant-based 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, I said, well, I didn't dry up and blow away, so I'm going to go 2 more weeks. And I went 2 more weeks. And at the end of that, I was like, oh, you know, I'll go another month and see how this goes. Well, at the end of 2 months, I just said, yeah, I just don't think I'm going to eat meat anymore. And I didn't. And it was really that simple. It wasn't some big cause. It wasn't something. I'm not a vigilante vegan that's going out there and, you know, boycotting people and stuff like that. I believe that people need to choose the diet that's right for their genetics, their epigenetics, and their lifestyle. And I'm a proponent of that. And for me, plant-based diet was just something that worked out for me. And I had to cultivate a lot of technology in order to make it even more successful, particularly in the bodybuilding world, which was very unusual, especially back in 2001. There was no options for us. And I was one of the first people. I think I might be the only person that's competed at both the Mr. Universe and the World Championships, drug-free and as on a plant-based diet.
It's interesting. Was the Holy Science, the author that was, I'm guessing he was Indian.
Mm-hmm.
So, because like, a lot of like vegetarian, well, Indians, vegetarian, it's the cows are sacred animals to themselves, and depends on what religion they are. And so it's interesting because I'm with you. I say whatever works for you, go for it. I'm massively against shaming and anything, and I think it's really refreshing actually when I heard you talk to Paul, and when I've heard some of the other videos, you're just like exactly what you said, do what's right for you, basically your diet, which is really, really important. But I think a lot of times some people they read a book and they don't realize, for example, like that book, for example, written by an Indian, and so a lot of Indians do really well on a diet with less meat. It's like the Chinese trying to study, It's funny, I'm not a Chinaman, but they do well on their diet. And so it is really interesting for you to say that. But when you said in 2000 there wasn't much choice for you, or wasn't many people done what you did in a plant-based diet, did you find when you went vegetarian that your energy still was good, your muscle, you managed to keep muscle, like was it easy, was your digestion, did you notice any difference there, would you think,
great question. And so I would say this, I started to try what I would call a meat eater's mentality to a plant-based diet, and that didn't work out because what I was looking to do is, and at that time I was a lacto vegetarian. In other words, I would take whey protein because there was no plant proteins and stuff in order to supplement my diet. And during that process, when I was competing, I went and I was consuming 200 to 300 grams of protein, and that was primarily my source. And that's what led to the digestive dysfunction in my body. So no, it wasn't a smooth transition. It wasn't easy, and I made lots of mistakes, and that, and that's what led me up to understanding that I was essentially using the crack cocaine of protein, if you will. This wasn't grass-fed, non-hormone. This was just the early days of whey protein, which was very sketchy at the time. So at that point, when I came out of that and started to rebuild my digestive health, I went on a completely raw food diet for 2 years. So I ate no meat, no dairy, no eggs, nothing like that. And that was also an extremely challenging diet, both on what your options were. Second, socially. I mean, it's you want to be the weird guy in the room all the time. That's the way to go. And but I learned a lot. I learned a lot, and that's part of the thing. I think if people are listening to this is for some reason, everybody just wants to kowtow to an authority nowadays, as opposed to taking the time and doing some experimentation on their own. Like, do the experimentation on your own, track your results, test your results with what I call the Jedi Council, with some medical experts and naturopathic doctors, nutritionists, chiropractors. Get some, tests that we talk about, whether it's SpectraCell, pulse tests, HOMO-IR, blood sugar and insulin regulation, Dutch test, hormone test. Use these tests as guidelines. Set aside enough time experientially, both to see what's happening testing-wise and also what's happening on your own biofeedback. Write down your biofeedback. Say, how do I feel? Am I waking up tired? Am I waking up energized? Am I waking up all these things? Am I hungry all the time? Whatever it happens to be. What's my skin tone look like? What's my brain comprehension like? All those things. And that will start giving you clues, and you'll start to pick out patterns. And as you pick out patterns, you make adjustments. And ultimately, 10, 20, 30 years down the road, you have tweaked out your diet to the max, yet you set a pattern of flexible thinking. And that flexible thinking allows you to be open, to consider what's coming into your life, and to test it and experiment with it if it's right for you. And that way you automatically accept as that I don't know everything, and that as you go through the stages of life, I mean, the bottom line is the body starts to degenerate, starts to break down. You start losing essential reserves, and nobody thinks that's going to happen to them, but it's absolute guarantee. And is how do you manage that decline and actually maybe delay that decline and even reverse that trend in some cases for at least a period of time so that you can boost up your health. And I've seen that over and over and over again. And so that's part of the message that we have.
Yeah, no, that's also, I mean, that's one of the things that drew me to you as well. When I heard you speak, it was very open-minded, you're not closed off, which was great, and as you said there, I mean, I always say to people, you're a study of one. It doesn't matter what, as you said, people have like gone to this authority and they'll have a diet written down for them by someone, and they eat the food and they feel terrible. And I say, okay, so why are you still eating that food? Well, because the nutritionist or doctor said it was good for me. So cool. Well, when does your brain kick in and you realise that that food's making you feel terrible? It's like, it doesn't matter how many studies they've done it on whoever else, your body's saying, this isn't right for me at the moment. And as you said, the different stresses in your life, where you are, what you're doing, all can mean that your body might crave different foods at different times. And especially like if you're going through a very stressful period, maybe you don't want to be eating a lot of meat, which takes a lot of time to digest. But if you're someone who's doing a lot of weightlifting, who's not vegetarian, or doing something that's breaking down a lot of muscle, maybe you need some more flesh-based foods. But it's very, very sort of just listen to your body, and which that's what I love about that. And especially because your business partner is on keto, right?
He's a ketogenic guy. So if you look at dietary practices, Matt and myself are about as polar opposite on the scale as you can get, and
they both work.
Yeah, and the thing is that's a testament to both of us, and it's a testament to, like, we both have a background in exercise physiology and kinesiology. We were both nutritionists. We were both personal trainers. We've both coached a vast array of people at every age and demographics, from professional athletes to grandmothers. And we've accumulated an incredible amount of information. And we have, still to this day, we have very spirited debates about various topics. And if you look back to going back to the Greeks, going back to dialogue, one of the best things that can happen to you is to have somebody who has a position or a level of experience that is opposite of yours. And there is a way to respectfully communicate. And I think of one of the damaging things into what I would say human intelligence that's going on right now. And that is with social media and the way the algorithms work in, kind of directing you into channels which your likes or your biases happen to be, is that you end up in these echo chambers of, people just reaffirming each other's biases. And then usually the most extreme person within that group now becomes the spokesman or representative for that ideology. And that is really how the cultivation of dogma and these groups of what I call the almost virtual digital social media tribes are now engaged in tribal warfare, where they're not interested in actually communicating and finding the answer. They're only interested in putting forth their limited view on the world as the absolute truth. And history has shown that just doesn't work. We've been involved in tribal warfare for thousands and thousands of years. It's still going on, and now we have the capability of nuclear weapons. So, if we get into tribal warfare at this point, we can be the total non-existence of humanity. And I do believe that's the consciousness test of our lifetimes. Humanity is going to have to be able to find a better way to communicate differences and to live and let live, and to in the pursuit of truth, or we don't pass the universal consciousness test, we will exterminate ourselves. And I believe that's a checks and balance that's built right into the foundation of the universe itself. So that's our choice today.
Yeah, I mean, what you just said there can go so many ways with that. It's like 100%. I mean, in one way, it is like you can go on social media or you look at certain things. Look, this conversation proves that it's not just like that, because there are people out there that want to have a conversation and get to the root of things and help people. If you want to, you can go to echo chambers, and a lot of dialogue has been lost today. If you go on things like Twitter, for example, a lot of times it's just people shouting angrily at each other. No one wants to listen, even if you get a good point. But the fact that you've got the sun and the moon shows you that there are equal opposite things all the time, pulling together in the same direction. Same as water and fire. You have opposites, and whatever you think is right, the opposite is probably true as well for someone else out there. And so you can go on something like YouTube if you want and just look at lots of hateful videos of people being in arguments. You could do that all day long. The flip side of that is you can also go on YouTube and listen to people like yourself and Paul Chek all day and really get some great information and try and change yourself in the world. So it's like sometimes it's hard because it's clickbaity. It's very easy to be drawn into those things, especially when you hold a position on these things. I myself have been watching something. I think, what the hell am I watching this for? Get rid of that. Listen to something that's obviously going to give your mind, or because not just toxic food, but toxic things come into your eyes, into your ears, right, and obviously into your mouth. So interesting. And you said that.
One point I'd like to add to that, and I think this is where Pareto's law is very powerful. And if you actually look at the foundational components of most of the greatest health advocates in the world, about 80% of it is actually in alignment. Get chemicals out of your food. Eat whole base food products. Choose organics over conventional. Read the labels that you're having. Find a diet that is suitable to your individual genetics and epigenetics, right? Remove the toxins inside your body. Those messages are pretty clear across the board. Maintain physical exercise on a daily basis. Drink pure water. Ensure that you have your micronutrients in order as well as your macros, and then test to see what the results are. That's universal. And so if you look at these debates, we're debating the 20%, as opposed to saying, hey, there's some patterns here in the 80%. If I just can get this 80% done, I'm probably going to do really, really well. And then that last 20, I'm going to use what I call tweakology to kind of really optimize your diet. And that's a fun process. And it's something that can be enjoyable. And for those people who are suffering out there, it might sound totally crazy with it. They've been dealing with decades of problems with digestive issues or health conditions and stuff. And to get to the point where actually doing these things could be fun might sound totally crazy and radical, but every single person that I've seen go from this process, wherever they were on the spectrum, whether they were an athlete, whether they were someone who was sick or challenged, or someone who just wanted to look better and feel better or have more energy for their families, every single one of them that sticks with that program gets to a place where it becomes fun and becomes its own journey of self-discovery. And I think that's really what the human condition is all about.
Yeah, it's and I want to go into that because when I actually messaged a guy, when I listened to your podcast, I was like, right, I'm gonna mega dose with the enzymes and see what happens here, and I want to get into that in a bit. But just on your point there, especially when it comes to like a lot of people sometimes get trapped down these rabbit holes and listening to people that sometimes, like these people, even politicians, for example, not getting enough sleep, probably eating poor food, drinking terrible water. Their body and their blood, I mean, your brain can only be as healthy as the blood that surrounds it. They're not even healthy enough to think clearly. And what they get these agendas going, and it's like this, they just want to cause friction, because if you get the left and the right at each other, that's how you can control them. And a bigger agenda, we can go down that for another time. But it's sort of like sometimes just like take a step back and think, what are they trying to do here? Who am I? Who do I become when I'm angry? Is it someone I like, or what is that? What fear comes out of me? If I take a step back from that and I ignore it and I just take care of not just myself, but I just try and live the way I want to live. It's amazing how that stuff is almost irrelevant, and you just move forward. And talking about that, it is a fun journey. That's one of the things I wanted to get into, and I want to get into that. Because I remember you saying you trained in 3 weeks, you managed to do like 12 weeks of training, when you like almost super mega dose the enzymes, which I want to get into.
Correct.
But for yourself, what are the because I deal with a lot of people with gut issues, and most of it, I mean, some of the advice they get from not all doctors, but a lot of doctors, some of it is just horrific, and some of the products that they get given to take, I mean, it's like a who's who and what's what of what you don't want someone with a digestive issue to have, But what are like the biggest digestive issues you see in most people? Is it things like IBS, constipation, or is it maybe that they've had like reduced HCl or reduced digestive enzymes? What would you say is usually the thing you see most?
Yeah. So all of it is really an inflammatory response from the diet. And then the second phase of that would be the um, the limit amount of enzymes, hydrochloric acid, and good bacteria. So just for people to understand really quickly, there's 5 stages of digestion. You taste, touch, smell, and chew the food, which prepares the salivary response. Your body starts to chew the food. Food goes into the esophagus and into the upper cardiac portion of the stomach. That's where the enzymes are supposed to be breaking it down. If there's no enzymes present in the food, cooked food, irradiated food, pasteurized food, guess what? Your body has to manufacture enzymes, but you miss a key element of digestion. The next stage is hydrochloric acid comes into the body, which we produce after about 30 to 60 minutes. That changes the pH range, and it also disinfects from viruses, microbes, parasites, and other bacteria. The average person by the time they're 40 has less than 30% of the enzymatic potential they had at birth and less than 30% of the hydrochloric acid levels. Those contribute to, interesting enough, acid reflux is probably one of the biggest things. Acid reflux, heartburn, probably one of the biggest things, and that's from a 2-part problem. Enough enzymes to break it down, not enough hydrochloric acid, those first 2 issues.
Really? Because all doctors say you haven't got enough. Oh, so you got too much.
Yeah. So if people understand the basic physiology, most people think there's a big bowl of hydrochloric acid sitting in their stomach.
Yeah.
And it's not. That comes in 30 to 60 minutes after your digestion is supposed to have begun. So if you have the ironic part is if you have acid reflux or heartburn, it's not generally 99 times out of 100. It's not because you're producing too much acid, is that you're not producing enough. And that little flap on the top of the esophagus stays closed. And what happens, fermentation happens, or it keeps that open because when you hit a certain amount of acid, that lid will close. And when you don't have enough, it stays open. And then acid starts to spike up into the esophagus and cause that heartburn sensation. And of course, left unchecked, that leads to, throat cancers and things like that. And the widely crazy part about it is if you go into a doctor, they're going to prescribe you an antacid, or you're going to go over the counter and you're going to get the pink fluid, or you're going to get the pill that's that's buffering acid. And if you look at the literature, the medical literature on proton pumps and antacids, you're supposed to be on those for 4 to 6 weeks. The bottom line is that your diet is not suitable, that what you're eating is not right, and you've got to change your diet, and you've got to add some nutritional support because your digestive system is compromised. Third stage that happens after that food comes through the body, it's buffered by minerals, and into the final stage of digestion is where your probiotics work on it. And there's 10% good, 10% bad, 80% opportunist. And if you have a disbalance in that, from the use of antibiotics, too much sterilization, not enough probiotics in the food that you're eating naturally as we used to get, all of a sudden you've got too many bad guys, and they feed particularly on undigested proteins and create all sorts of toxins inside the body that messes up your brains, messes up your neurotransmitter production, causes all sorts of conditions. So you're literally under your nervous system, and your brain is actually being controlled by the bugs. And those late night sugar cravings, the inability to stay, I can't eat sugar, or I can't eat these trans fatty acids. Why are you craving those things? Well, it's because the bacteria are jacked into your nervous system, and they're running the show. And you need to clean that stuff out. You need to take control of your body. You need to put the good guys in. You need to get your digestion down right, and then that'll lead to elimination. So what we see particularly is a few different areas. I would say acid heartburn is probably one of the biggest ones, easily remedied for most people with hydrochloric acid. Next thing I would say is skin conditions, depression, and low energy or brain fog in the morning, bad breath, crusty eyes, all that sort of stuff. That's usually related to you're not breaking down your proteins, which I would say is particularly with enzymes. Or if you have blood sugar issues, oftentimes you have low amylase levels, and why I think ketogenic diets have become popular. If you look at the history of most of those people that do well on a ketogenic diet, they ate a lot of sugar when they were kids. And if they ate a lot of sugar when they're kids, they probably blew out their carbohydrate digesting capability. So your body's trying to say, don't eat that anymore, eat this other stuff so I can stabilize my blood sugar. And then the final stage is a gut dysbiosis, and that leads to a variety of conditions, everything from, candida to grinding your teeth to skin conditions, again, also can lead to brain fog and a color constipation. And so as our company, we've addressed all those things. We create in-depth videos with naturopathic physicians and doctors and experts in genetics and epigenetics. I interview people. I share that information readily, and we provide solutions based on coaching, tens of thousands of people over the last 15 years to get themselves out of those conditions.
No, it's awesome. I mean, what you said there, a lot of people don't realize this, and I think when it comes to the hydrochloric acid, especially, like, people, but it's something they've heard a lot. You go to the doctor and they give them something to reduce the hydrochloric acid, and it's like that's the opposite they should do. And the other one for the skin issues as well, people don't realize that it comes from their gut, because if you're not detoxifying toxins and not going out through it. I mean, you've got men, we've got 4 ways of getting rid of toxins. Women have got 5. We've got breath, urine, sweat, and stool. And women have menstrual cycle up to a certain age. If you're not getting rid of those toxins through your digestive system, I mean, they're going to keep coming out your skin, and then you've got all other issues. People putting on endocrine and hormone disrupting chemicals, etc., fragrances. But your gut is so important when it comes to getting rid of these toxins. And everything you said there, having a gut dysbiosis is it's prevalent. I think even when you said about the critters as well, how much people don't understand how much they can infiltrate the nervous system and how much they can actually crave, and they can take control. And as you said before, feed on undigested proteins. I mean, they live in dysfunction. Every time you're angry or stressed, etc., they proliferate. They love that. That's what I mean. They're Mother Nature's decomposers, and they've been around a lot longer than us, and they they will survive. So always, as you said, creating health from the inside out is very, very powerful. I like to almost call it like gentrifying an area.
Yeah, that's great.
You want to change the area so the good guys, majority of the good guys want to stay. You need some bad guys to keep the good guys honest, but you need majority of good guys. They want to stay, rather than having it the other way around, where these bad guys just proliferate, take over, and then all of a sudden you just, I mean, as you said, anything from brain fog to digestive issues to you get sore joints, not sleeping properly, and whatever. The list is literally endless, and really interesting, because I want to get into the different products you've got, and I've actually got your thing here in front of me.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, that's great.
The different,
some of our stacks that we do for different products and
the different stacks. I mean, I really want to change them all or try them all, and I don't know which one to start with, because I was just like, right. I listened to you and was like, he was taking 100 enzymes a day. I can't do that. I'm not that rich. I'll try and do whatever. But it's really interesting, because I just want to talk through these, because there's the people out there. I'll tell you what. No, we'll do that afterwards, just because I just want to say, for the average person, in fact, because I think these do come. I think you send this out with most of your.
We do. We send it out. Products. We send it out with our packages to people, so they can start looking at some of the stacks, and then also we have all of this kind of out in videos and things like that at our website. They can reach out to customer service, and we're happy to supply all the stuff so people know how to take this, and then they can just put this up somewhere, where they can see what they're doing and remind themselves until it becomes automatic.
Well, 100%. And this is why I just wanted to go over the products, just because people be like, well, what's the difference between Bioptimzers and other enzymes? Because obviously there's lots of enzymes on the market. So what makes your enzymes different to other enzymes? And also, because really interesting, I myself had someone who had a lot of skin issues. I had very bad acne, then I had keloid scarring all over my chest and back, and through diet and lifestyle, the scars have gone down remarkably. But having your enzymes with food and having your enzymes on an empty stomach, what's the difference? And because lots of enzymes on an empty stomach might cause gut irritation, but yours won't. Is that correct?
Yeah. So partly because we use what's called cultured enzymes. So if you look at the realm of enzymes, there's food enzymes, there's animal-based enzymes, and food enzymes is something you would just find in food that naturally occurring if it hasn't been irradiated, which isn't sufficient enough to break down that food once it enters into the digestive canal. So it all works very symbiotically. Unfortunately, we irradiate most of our fruits, vegetables, and things like that, and so we don't have any enzymes present. Second type of enzyme would be animal-based enzymes. And those products are generally only effective within a very narrow pH range. So they have limited use inside the body, or sometimes no use, depending on the diet that a person's following. Then you have systemic enzymes. So those are enzymes that you would take on an empty stomach. Things like serrapeptidase for scarring that you were talking about. These are nattokinase, and these are enzyme formulations that are designed to produce very specific results in the body, and they cannot be taken with food. That's a systemic enzyme. Then you have plant enzymes, so the enzymes that have been, fermented or cultured or whatever. And then you got to get to the ultimate stage, which is a cultured enzyme. And what a cultured enzyme is an enzyme that's been grown on very specific mediums under very controlled circumstances so that you can amplify the potency and effectiveness of that. So if you take a cultured enzyme, it's going to be anywhere from 100 to 1,000 times more potent than your typical plant enzyme. And when people are assessing an enzyme product, unfortunately, what happens is those distinctions aren't necessarily made on the labels. So, for example, one item might say it has 20,000 huts of, which is a digestive unit, international digestive unit. The enzyme digestive unit is just a whole complicated thing. But the bottom line is that's the digesting capacity of that product that it'll limit. The challenge is the differentiation isn't sophisticated enough for labels. So you could have a very cheap animal or plant-based enzyme with that designation and actually won't get the job done the same as maybe a cultured enzyme would, like a fraction of the cultured enzyme. 5,000 huts of the cultured enzyme might outperform the 20,000 of a given plant or animal-based enzyme. And the population isn't sophisticated enough to understand those differentiations. So what happens in the supplement industry, and this is the part that drives me crazy and why I started my own company, is because about 95% of the products out there are just running on trends, and they're built on margins. So if a new study comes out of the New England Journal of Medicine that this enzyme or this nutrient is good, what happens is they go to the cheapest source possible. They get some slick copywriting, some slick marketers to promote that product, and they dupe people onto the next trend. And they buy those news cycles as part of their marketing cycle. And that company might be out of business in a couple of years. And the same people will start another company and another
like
company.
CBD, yeah. CBD is a massive one recently.
Yeah, that's a great trend that's happening right now. The effectiveness of CBD, high quality CBD for pain management, sleep, and overall general health is fantastic. The reality is probably 95% of the products today are, ineffective in achieving that because of either the formulation, the product quality, the amount that's in it, or other elements that might be added that actually interrupt, disrupt, or completely preclude that from actually having its function. But it's a great trend product. And so because of that, there's I don't know how many everybody seems to have a CBD, none of it. And then what happens is the consumer goes out and maybe tries one of these inferior products. It doesn't produce the result they want, and they throw that product under the bus. And that's the part that why we spend so much time on education. That's why we spend so much time in curating the design and development of our products. When we design a product, we don't just come up with ourselves. We actually consult with the very best experts that we can find in those fields. And we sit down and we say, look, first and foremost, budget is not part of the equation here. We're building on effectiveness. And let's go from there, and then we'll figure out the pricing and the marketing over time, because we believe I'd rather have a much lower margin product that people buy repeatedly than a high margin that we're not servicing our customer and our community the way that we want. And we believe that at our company is that we don't have customers, we have clients and family members. And so we want to treat that person with the utmost respect as if I was dealing with them one-on-one in person and sitting down with them. And that's the message that both Matt and I have followed. And it's a slower process, but there's a reason we've been around for 15 years.
Well, it's integrity, right? It's everything, and it's why I only put on my site things that I would use first or that I know work, or and funny enough, the products I sell are generally more expensive because the ingredients are more expensive. They've taken more money to produce. They're of higher quality. And I'm going to quote you: "There's nothing more expensive than a product that doesn't work." Right?
Correct. Yeah. Thanks for saying that. It's true. It doesn't matter what you spend. If it doesn't work, you just wasted all your money.
Yeah. Oh, well, but that one's £15. Yeah, but that one you might as well set that £15 on fire. This one you might spend double, but you'll actually be getting the benefit of it. So it's the same as anything. Would you? Well, it's like I could put £30 of petrol in my car, or I could fill it with water. One would be a lot cheaper, but the water won't make my car run.
Correct.
And so it's the way. This is why I wanted to get onto it, but this is why 100%. It's all about quality and quality over quantity every time, and it's about getting the benefits in these things. So for people out there, so you mentioned the systemic enzyme, and then you've got the enzyme when you eat your food. How do your enzymes? How have you made them that you can take them on an empty stomach and you can take them with food, and they both work?
Yeah, here's the beauty thing. So when we developed these products, we subjected them to tests so that they can survive the gastrointestinal tract. And what's really interesting is with a high quality enzyme. So there's a principle in orthomolecular nutrition. Let me back the truck up for a second. So in orthomolecular nutrition that was developed by Dr. Linus Pauling, a 2-time Nobel Prize winner, Dr. Abraham Hoffer, and Dr. David Hawkins back in the 70s, and they started using nutrition to actually treat very dysfunctional psychological issues, schizophrenia and things like that. They found that there was neurological associations related in nutrition, and they could correct that. And one of the things that they developed was a dosing model that they would dose up the product until you got the runs, which is called breaking the GI barrier. So if they were taking vitamin C, for example,
vitamin C, yeah.
They would start increasing that dosage until your body hit tolerance. So let's say you got the runs at 10 milligrams or 10 grams. Well, they would take you up to 10 grams, and then they would titrate down to maybe 8 grams. And they would keep at 8 grams until you got the runs again, and then they would drop that to maybe 6 or 5 grams, and then so this way they would build up until you filled up your what I call the bucket. You had a full bucket. Your lifestyle is the burn rate; it's a hole in the bucket. So they would fill up the bucket, and then you only needed a maintenance dose. So when I started correcting my own health issues with Dr. O'Brien, we looked at the same model to do that same with various nutrients. And now today you have much more sophisticated testing. You can do a live SpectraCell analysis. You can do a SpectraCell analysis, which will tell you all the nutrient deficiencies. You can do this with anything. But here's the crazy part about enzymes, and this is where I'm going. So generally, and this is why I put it to the test with 1,000 capsules in a day. I'm not necessarily recommending people do that, but I want to see at what point would I break the GI barrier with enzymes. And guess what? At 1,000 capsules a day, no runs. And when we did take stool samples, there were no enzymes present in the stool. That means my body was actually absorbing and utilizing the entire 1,000 enzymes. And in all of my studies over the last 3 decades, we have never found any other product other than enzymes that you can take in that kind of super physiological dosages and not be absorbed. And I do believe it's because your enzymes, they're not just used in that initial digestion. They're reconstituted and used for a variety of things. And when you take the masszymes on an empty stomach, and if there's no food in the body to digest, or there's no undigested food in your intestinal tract, what happens? Your body absorbs and converts those into systemic or metabolic enzymes. And we've seen that with the acceleration of recovery that's been proven in wound healing. I had a great story with a friend of mine who had a large necrosis scar on her shoulder. She'd take the masszymes, and over the course of 9 months, we'd put them on an empty stomach 5 twice a day. And as soon as she'd take it, about 15 minutes later, she'd get red and itchiness on her, on that scar. You could see it. It was phenomenal. And then over the course of 9 months, that scar completely flattened and turned to a pinkish color, so much that her 3-year-old daughter at the time said, "Mom, what happened to your scar? It's not there anymore."
Well, it's really interesting because that's one of the reasons why I was, because all my scars are basically almost gone. And they used to be a big crux for me, and I had a big issue there. And now I didn't take my shirt off for 7 years because I had really bad scars, but that was because I was on steroids and on medication. It was in a real bad way, but now they're fine. But I've still got a few of them, and I was really interested to see myself, like if I mega dosed them, what would happen. I was wondering, when you say like on an empty stomach, how long would you say? Is it how you feel empty? I mean, for example, if you intermittent fasted and you give yourself 16 hours break from food, or would you even recommend taking them maybe on a 24-hour fast and doing like 100 through that day? Something you would recommend?
Yeah, well, you can accelerate what I believe is some of the benefits of, and so why does fasting work, for example? Fasting works because number one, it rests the digestive system. And what I believe, it turns your enzyme potential away from digestion, which is about 70% of our enzymatic is
75%,
is directed to digestion. So when you shut that down, you now allow your body to take those enzymes instead of making digestive enzymes, that it can make a variety of different enzymes. There's over 25,000 enzymatic processes that we know of, and virtually every species, when it gets sick or ill, stops eating. And I believe because all of them. And so this is a natural process. And other people's like, well, you got to eat. No, trust your body's natural thing. And what I believe that adding all these extra enzymes can do for people is that it can accelerate the results of that. Now, I'm hoping one day to do some autophagy studies, because one of the big questions is, well, can you take coffee or can you take enzymes and still manage to maintain autophagy? So I believe in my own experience that it will accelerate the results.
Would make sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so that's just based on anecdotal results of doing fasting with enzymes and doing fasting without enzymes. Like right now, for example, I haven't eaten for 3 days. I'm on an accelerated fast right now. I have total clarity and brain function. I don't have any hunger components. I don't have an energy issue. Sleep's not disrupted, and I'm able to carry on my life. Now, that wasn't the case when I started this process years ago. And I do periodically both. I fast with it. So right now I'm fasting without enzymes for 3 days. Right. And now that we're deep, I know I can kind of tell when my body's deep in ketosis, where you're running on ketones. So now, as of tomorrow, when I go to the next level of my phase, I'm going to start pounding more enzymes inside the body to accelerate the benefits. Yeah. And so I go through those periods and get myself into those states to see what happens, and then I just keep running the experiments.
Well, it's interesting because I want to just because it's got other stuff as well. I mean, you got your Capex, which is really interesting. But what you're doing there, because I might go with the there's some really good ones here. Muscle building stack is interesting. If you're going to be digesting your food and assimilating your food better, you're also going to put on more lean muscle when you're going to be able to, if you're not, you just said before, it's what you are what you eat, but it's actually what you assimilate. If you're not assimilating it, then it's pretty much like pointless. But really interesting. What are you taking anything else on your fast? I mean, would you be taking probiotics, any of your herbal parasite cleansing capsules, and I mean, guessing you wouldn't take any HCl on an empty stomach unless you were trying to.
It depends.
Because you're about to say if you want to get rid of parasites, maybe, but otherwise your HCl wouldn't cause any irritation. Some having HCl can.
Basically, what you do is you use that same component. So, particularly if you're dealing with parasites or bacteria infections, I think dosing up HCl, and the same thing. You start at 1 cap, several times a day. Then you go to 2. Then you go to 3, then you go to 4. And when I was
on an empty stomach?
Yeah. So you can do it. Yeah. So for example, when I was dealing with a parasite, for those who don't know, I had a parasite that was actually eating my eye, almost lost my eye. I went to 20 capsules of HCl in a day on an empty stomach while I was fasting. And I combined that with a variety of anti-parasitical herbs, which is in my herbal parasite cleanse. Now, I actually gathered the herbs and experimented, and that's why we come up with that combination. That came up from my own experience. So it can be beneficial. You're going to get a major variance on how much HCl. Keep in mind, I'm a late 40s guy. So the level of HCl that I might have compared to someone at 20 years old is probably significantly different. And so that's part of the factor. So I want to use that caveat. Again, just increase the dosage and see what happens. As far as anti-parasites, yes. And the Constant Cleanse, the herbal laxative component that kind of pushes everything else. I use those periodically. I don't rely on them. So I went through, in this case, the 3 days, absolutely nothing. And as of tomorrow, I'm going to be kicking in Parasite Cleanse, HCl, and Constant Cleanse. So now that I've got myself into that pristine state, I'll stack those to kind of further drive that, and I'll start stacking the enzymes and all these sort of things, because I've got my body in that fasted, prepped state where I'm stable. I'm stable from a blood sugar standpoint and that sort of thing. And now I'm going to crank that up. I've done it the other way too, where I started, and I think a lot of people would probably be more beneficial starting it the other way. Keep in mind, I've been fasting now for over 20 years and have cultivated a responsiveness in my body that might be superior. So those herbal parasite cleanse or the constant starting out for a week or two, oftentimes very good.
Yeah, also, I mean, I always say to people as well, why I always recommend working with someone if you can, because, it cuts through. I always say you can learn yourself, which me and you have done, which, I didn't learn myself. I went and spoke and learned from experts, etc. But it's always cheaper and less time consuming to learn from someone else and learn yourself. And just I fast all the time as well, and as you do, and you get to know, you get to understand. Like, you might go through a healing crisis, and you might get a skin eruption if you've got something there, or some cravings or whatever it may be. If you're new to it, and they can be quite strong. So if you are listening to this and thinking of doing it, and you haven't done it before, just be careful and just take it easy and ease into stuff, or recommend working with someone to do it, because you can get a healing crisis where things get a little bit worse before they get better. And a lot of people stop because thinking it's not working, when in fact it actually is, because you're opening up your body's detoxification pathway. So it's very, very, and with the power of these supplements, if you're taking some of the recommended doses on here, you'll probably notice a difference internally. I mean, you might even your stool might change, for example.
Likely it will.
Exactly,
most people when they first start that process, sometimes they'll get maybe backed up for a day or two, and then kind of the floodgates release, and then they're spending a lot of time on the toilet, and that's just part of the healing process you're talking about. And that's where an expert who's got some experience can really help you guide, especially if you're starting out, because it can get a little dodgy at that first time around, depending how compromised you are, and then how fast your body detox. I happen to be what they call an over-methylator, and some people are under-methylator. So my business partner would be an under-methylator, and I'd be an over-methylator. And what that means is, so I tend to process things very fast and very quickly. So if I'm in some sort of pain or some sort of thing, it's done in it's super intense. It's done in 24, 36 hours. Where someone else who's maybe an undermethylator, they might go through that transition page for a week or 10 days. So it just comes down to your basic physiology, and a good naturopathic doctor or an expert in detoxification and cleansing can help guide you through that process. And I can't underestimate the importance of that to navigate some of these things.
100%. Yeah, I always say it's just like having a sat nav, right? It just guides you through it rather than hitting the roadblocks that you might come up on your own. But gone through a few of them, and I do want to talk about your mega dosing just for a bit. But the one also you've got here, well, it's two more actually. Gluten Guardian, or your probiotics. They sound. Have you talked to the guys at Seed at all?
Oh yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, they're interesting because you've got your probiotics there. And the two I was looking at, and your ones when I took them, very good, no reactions at all. Felt really good on them. Interesting. You said they're the most powerful protein digesting probiotic ever developed, which is awesome, especially people that have struggle digesting protein. Mm-hmm. With the gluten guardian, the Capex when I get into, and the gluten guardian. First of all, gluten guardian, a lot of people these days, it's gluten and the glyphosate. It causes a big issue, and they're hard to break them down. That's for people well, it's for everyone, I'm guessing, that just wants to maybe have, if they don't usually have gluten in their diet, they want to have a cheat meal, or they know they're going to be somewhere it's hard to break it down, they want to enjoy it, sort of, they can take 3 capsules with them and have it before their meal?
Yeah, exactly. So for people who are sensitive to gluten, I mean, social occasions, restaurants and stuff can be a nightmare because oftentimes there's, contamination with that. It's almost universal. And so the gluten guardian becomes a protection for that. Or even if everybody's kind of like on a 0 to 10 on the scale of responsiveness, and it tends to get progressively worse as we get older. A few caps of gluten guardian before you go to one of these social occasions, or you're going out with your friends, you're having pizza, or you're having birthday cake for somebody's party. Yeah. Maybe you're having some food that would contain gluten. Well, you can take that beforehand. You don't get the gas, you don't get the bloating, you don't get that kind of stuffy, full feeling or the brain fog that kind of is associated with this sensitivity to gluten. And it's great. I mean, the bottom line is, having gone through the challenges of not being able to eat in social situations with people because of my dietary choices, and for many people that's a requirement. It's not really a choice because otherwise they're in torturous pain for days afterwards. It becomes a great solution for that, and also for when you want to have those splurge days or whatever, you can go out and have fun and not worry about it.
But they've got on here on the cheat day stack. You've got 10 gluten guardians. Is that like for a big meal? Like if you're just going out and having maybe some bread, would it be less, or would you say?
Well, one of the things that we advocate if you get into our program is creating metabolic flexibility. So maintaining caloric restriction has its limits over time. So in other words, so a lot of people that are really concerned about their weight management will stay in a calorie deficit for long periods of time.
Yeah, it's naive.
And what happens is your body starts to adjust down your metabolism, and then it's very difficult to go off your diet. And then if you do Christmas season or things like that, all of a sudden there's these massive weight gains. So what we found, and kudos to my old coach, Scott Abel, he developed what's called the slingshot diet, and he would have what he calls spike days. So he would maintain a caloric deficit between dietary components and exercise of about 1,000 calories a day. You can keep in mind this is a hard training bodybuilder. And then once the person has gotten to single digit body fat levels or low body fat levels, then what he would start to incorporate in order to create metabolic flexibility is basically a massive calorie day. And that massive calorie day would be for most people in excess of 6,000, oftentimes 10,000, and for many of his bodybuilding clients, 15 or 20,000.
It's a lot of work on the digestive tract. Cool.
Yeah. So although it had great metabolic responses because he would do this in a window of maybe 12 to 18 hours.
How old is it Scott Abel? Because really interesting.
I think he's about 57. He's about 57.
Right, because Sylvester Stallone talked about this when he was in he said like he'd do like Monday to Friday, 800 to 1,000 calories a day, and then Saturday to Sunday, 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day. Just made his body just ate it up and got a great physique from doing it. Yeah,
and so the idea is that you're creating these masses. When you were in that, and keep in mind, Sylvester is definitely he's supported by various hormones. The second thing I would say also is that he's at what I call super physiological levels of body fat. His body fat is extremely low. So when he does those calorie spikes, the likelihood hormonally that body will store body fat is virtually zero. It's all just going to fill up his muscles. It's going to fill up his energy reserves, his fat stores inside of skeletal muscle and stuff. So and again, it's going to spike that metabolism so that you can do that. And as you do this more often, you becomes frequently. The one thing that came with that for a lot of people was digestive distress. They'd have a sleep apnea. They'd bloat up really bad on that day. They would have constipation, or they would get the runs later on. So one of the things that the stress on the digestive canal became extreme. So we started using that to optimize the function without creating the digestive health. And that's why we would, throw in all these massive components. And we've been following that model for many years to maintain a flexible metabolism, to be able to, as we say, eat that food and get away with it, but also not to compromise our digestion long term, which happens for a lot of people in that area. So we just took what Scott did and built upon that in order to make it a little bit healthier. And then, of course, socially, it's great because now I think one of the things that people develop when they get onto extreme levels of diets is they create these dysfunctional emotional relationships with food. And I think that's the biggest culprit, even more than the calories or the calories, is developing a negative emotional relationship with food.
Yeah, that stress. I mean, that stress can cause issues in itself, right? So, yeah, 10 gluten guardians, 8 probiotics, and 5 HL is interesting. Cool. That's for the cheat day stack. I mean, you've got other ones here: muscle building stack, bulletproof, overall health stack, vegetarian vegan stack, fat loss stack, brain boost stack, 90-day cleansing stack, which is interesting. The other one I just wanted to talk about, right? So the Capex, that has actually got HCl in it.
Yes, it does. Yeah. So that was like a standalone product, particularly developed for people on a ketogenic diet. So that product is a 3-part process. Number one, it's designed to break down your proteins and fats. It doesn't have amylase in it, for example, like Enzymes. Enzymes has 17 different enzymes and a real concentration on proteolytic enzymes because that's where you're going to get the most benefit. It's most the expensive part. With Capex, focus is also on the different lipases that are required. Lipase breaks down fats, and so people on a ketogenic diet oftentimes have trouble breaking down fats. I was one of those people. I didn't metabolize and digest fats. That's why I never went with the ketogenic diet. But when I added Capex in, I was able to metabolize and digest my fats much better than I could. So I live on carbohydrates and do very, very well on that. Where Matt, for example, my business partner, he can't do that. He does carbs once a week on a spike day, and that's it. So the second stage that he did, so first is to break down the fats and the proteins that you're consuming on a ketogenic diet, and that's combining the lipase, the protease, and the HCl. The second phase of that process is the L-carnitine, which is designed to take the broken down fats and transport it into the mitochondria. The mitochondria is the energy furnaces inside the body that is responsible for our energy metabolism. And so L-carnitine is the component that shuttles those in. Without the L-carnitine. And then the third phase of that was using the 7-keto DHEA, which if you imagine your mitochondria is like an electron propeller and it spins on and there's a flow of electrons that go through that. And by that, it's kind of like your jet. It's like almost like a jet stream that's powering up. What 7-keto DHEA has been demonstrated to do is to increase the spin of that propeller by about 20%. Right. And so what you're getting is a 20% boost in energy production, because at the end of the day, it's not about fats, proteins, and carbohydrates as far as energy performance or ketones. It's really a process called electron covalent transfer. All of that stuff needs to be broke down into electron, and that electron needs to move from one place to another. And that is the primary function of energy production inside the body. And if you go to Dr. Jack Kruse, who is probably one of the foremost authorities in the world on the function of mitochondria for health and longevity and energy production and a whole lot of variety of things. He says that's the missing element for many people, and has a whole array of things that you can do in regards to that. So he's kind of abrasive, but he's extremely bright, and he writes his blog in 2 different levels. One that is very technical for people who are very sophisticated in their model PhD type people at naturopathic doctors, and another one that's in layman terms. And so I love what he's doing in the world of comparing those things. Yeah,
he doesn't suffer fools. He's I actually had Phil Escott on the show last week. Phil was a very close friend of Jack's. Phil's got a book out. He's got a group on Facebook, 100% carnivore, but he's been carnivore for a while, opposite to you, but once again very open-minded, doesn't mind what people do. Jack he talks about Dr. Jack Kruse quite a lot. It's interesting, and it's really interesting that because in the Capex formula there isn't actually any sort of like energy boosting ingredients in terms of caffeine or anything like that?
No, there's no stimulants. So you're
no stimulants.
producing,
That's what I mean.
you're producing, you're producing energy not out of a nervous system response, but an excitatory response, which is things like, caffeine and guarana and go-to cola and all the various things that, ephedrine and all those stimulants going all the way up to like, cocaine and amphetamines are all excitatory toxins inside the body that activate a fight or flight response. This is actually going right into the engine, and it's like adding a turbo onto your car that's or a supercharger that's burning fuel that's already there, just in a much more efficient rate to turn up the horsepower and energy. And so even though I'm not on a ketogenic diet, I get up in the morning and I take my 4 K-Pex in the morning to kick my body into gear it's been great, and I really appreciate to have that product design. And again, that one was completely designed by Matt and some ketogenic experts that he worked with in order to come up with that. And even though I'm on a plant-based diet, I was able to benefit from that product.
Well, that's one of the things I was going to mention, because I'm not a keto. I actually I eat all foods, carbohydrates, meat, but I do a lot of movement and do well in everything, really, in terms of I have quite a balanced macro variable diet. If you're a metabolic type, and I'd be a variable diet, and so just looking at it, I mean, if you took them for a while and then you come off them, do you notice a difference?
What's interesting is there seems to be a buildup effect inside the body with all of our products. So what I find is that oftentimes people can cycle off them or cycle back on them, and you can kind of reawaken that experience. And on the other hand, I have yet to find a ceiling on Enzymes. There is a ceiling on K-Pex because of those other elements. Taking a high amount of lipase, for example, like super high levels of lipase could cause some problems over time. Also, there's a limit to the 7-keto DHEA of how much your body could utilize. So most people will never exceed 8 capsules in a day. And many people can only do like 1 or 2 at a time because that's enough for them. It's
K-Pex.
Yeah,
because on your fat loss stack, it says, just because I just want to get this one, fat loss says upon waking, 10 of them.
Yep.
Then before 2 p.m. on an empty stomach, 5 of them.
Yep.
Then with each meal, 4.
Yep. So that's a specific stack that you're looking to accelerate maximum fat loss. And this would be in a stage where people are titrating up. So when we talked about that orthomolecular nutrition component, they're going to push that max, and you'll want to push it until you start getting the runs. One of the things what happens is you definitely do not want to be taking the K-Pex probably beyond 2 p.m. because most people will find that their mitochondria is so accelerated. They're not stimulated like they drank a bunch of coffee, but it'll be 12 o'clock at night, and they're like, maybe I should go out for a run, or I need to read another book or whatever. So it can interrupt circadian rhythms on sleep cycles for sure.
I think I heard Matt say that. I think he took them the first time after 4 o'clock or so, I think it was, and he said he was like looking for extra work to do because he was buzzed up on that. But that's cool. So just for myself, I might start taking in the morning. What did you say, 4 something like that in the morning? Yeah,
that's what the dosage for me. That's my sweet spot for me. I just take 4 in the morning, and that's it. And I'm good to go. I have when I go out to, for example, I was at the Tony Robbins event, which is a Date with Destiny, which I highly recommend everybody go check that out. And you're putting in anywhere from 12 to 15 hour days. And what I was doing is I created a little stack where I would take 4 K-Pex in the morning, and I would also add some the Primergen vitamins and minerals with that. I would take the Bulletproof Unfair Advantage. I would take 4 of those capsules, which is high in PQQ, and then I would take the Prime. What's his product called? The Keto Prime. A tablet of Keto Prime. I would take that and half a cup or like a half bottle of guayaki green tea.
You're like biohacking.
Yeah, so I would take that. So I took that stack. I would take it in the morning, first thing when I get up, so around 7 a.m. And then I would take another round about 2 p.m. And I literally went through 3 days. And if you've been to a Tony Robbins, you're jumping around, you're running, you're doing intense emotional activity and work. And I wouldn't eat all day. And I did that for a period of 72 hours. Actually, it was a little bit longer. It was 3 days, and then so starting the next day. So it was really more like about 84 hours that I went without eating anything. And in my group, I was voted the most energetic guy in the group. So once again, I was able to leverage these effects by biohacking myself into, I call it biological optimization, optimizing all the components that gives energy and produces energy, and leverage those systems by creating these stacks. And it's been great. To be able to play around with these things and test them in the environment and report back to people.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, right? That's what Ben Greenfield does all the time. I do it myself. It's really interesting just to see like what these things do, and creating your own stacks and seeing. And you know what? We always say that when you haven't eaten, that's when you're like the hunter. When you've got all the energy to go and get food. When you've eaten, you can be like the lazy overeater. It just digesting food and everything slows down. So it would make total sense to me. Whenever I've got a lot of work to do or anything like that, I need to be sharp. I don't generally eat liquids and maybe greens drinks and maybe some, maybe like a bone broth, things like that. Things easy in the digestive system. You don't want to be sitting there using your energy to digest food. As you mentioned earlier, I think it's like 50 to 75% of people's daily calories just move food from mouth to anus. And so it's like people don't understand that. So last thing, actually, I'm going to let you decide the last thing, but just for people out there, I just want to get into it because I want to touch on it a few times. You yourself did a 3-week period where you got yourself into competition shape. You was a bodybuilder, and you did it in 3 weeks. It would normally take you 12, and you did this through megadosing enzymes. Okay. Yeah,
so, a combination of things on top of that too. If I can share with people if they want to know.
Go for it. Yeah, go for it. I was going to say, it seems because 3 weeks for anyone know that's a very short period of time. Even to be able to train like you're about to say, you must have been like. I mean, was it? Did you feel the effects of it afterwards, or was it actually quite smooth sailing because you're doing all the other things as well? Yeah,
well, thanks for asking. And I think it was a combination of factors, including the enzymes. And so I'll reveal exactly what it is. So keep in mind, this was in 2007. I had retired from competition after that 2000 Mr. Universe to work on my health. And during that time, as I cracked the code on health, and we coached over 15,000 people around the world, we started to learn a lot. And so I said, okay, when 2007 rolled around, I was actually a student with a fellow that I've had on my podcast, Corey Hawley. He runs the Chi Institute, and he has an amazing nutrition course that's fantastic. He's a very knowledgeable bodybuilding guy. The guy is like, at the time he was in his 50s, just an absolute great athlete, master's athlete. And he was going to he was going to the Natural World Championships in Mr. Olympia, and we were sitting around the table one day at actually Dr. Michael Colgan's. We were at his power training camp.
Oh, right, yeah.
Another great genius, and they're friends, and I was part of that circle because I was learning from Dr. Michael Colgan at that time, and we were sitting on his couch, and we connected, and Corey said, "Hey, I'm going to the World Championships. I'm really excited about it," because we connected about our relationship with Arnold and pumping iron and Conan the Barbarian, and we had this great sharing. And I said, "Geez, man, I think I can go." I said, "What's the qualification for that?" And he says, "Well, the contest is a number of months away." He goes, "But there's a national championship coming up in about 3.5 weeks." And he says, "I'm actually the MC for it." Now, I've been training, but not training as a competitive athlete.
Yeah.
And so I said, the idea got in my mind. I said, I think I'd like to go to that. I think it'd be really fun if we were over in Greece together going to the World Championships. I haven't been in the Worlds in 4 years. And so this crazy bug got in my eye and into my head, I guess. I was like, can I actually do this? Like, I know that I couldn't get in shape under the normal parameters, because usually I actually took more than 12 weeks. I would take 20 weeks preparation for me to get in, because I was not genetically blessed I had to kind of out condition my athletes and the other athletes. So I always would show up harder, drier, more ripped, and more symmetrical than a lot of my competitors who had genetic advantages over me. And that could get me to the worlds. It wouldn't push me over the top of the worlds, because at the end of the day, the top guys are just operating with a different body than I am.
Yeah.
But I still could be my best. So I said, well, what would I do? The biggest component is the recovery component. How do I recover? And I knew that enzymes were a big part of the recovery process, that I could accelerate recovery if I could get enough enzymatic reactions. The second part of that is I realized that I needed to be able to get the lactic acid out of my system from extreme training. So what I did is I said, well, I'm going to take a 12-week contest prep and I'm going to compress it into 3 weeks. So I'm going to do all the workouts that I would do in that time. And then I'm going to have to find a way to recover from those workouts. And what I did was this. So I did a combination. I did 100 enzymes a day divided in dosages of 10, basically every hour and a half that I was up. Okay. The second thing that I did was I drank about, it would be about 10 liters a day of Kangen water, which is an ionized water machine that I feel is phenomenal for recovery. And that's now been proven by Dr. Horst Wiltzer, who did human trials on it and showed about its reducing inflammation in the body and is serving as an antioxidant, and also it boosts mitochondrial function. I did that. I would do a hyperbaric chamber. I was pushing myself into a hyperbaric chamber every day. I was doing infrared sauna every day for about an hour and a half. I was also jumping on my Cellerciser, which is a mini trampoline, 5 times a day. So I would work out 3 times a day, and I would jump on the trampoline 5 times a day. And then I would drink all this water to flush out the system. So I'm pumping my lymphatic system to get the body out. Then I'm super oxygenating. I'm also detoxifying from the sauna, and I'm doing my workouts, and I'm taking, extraordinary amount of Masszyme so I could support myself chemically on that side. And literally I went from, walking around in okay condition to contest ready at a national championship, walked in, won both of my classes and the posing championship that I went to, because I was as a junior master, and I was also in the regulars types, and captured the title. And 3 months later, joined Corey at the World Championships in Thessaloniki, Greece, and we had a great old time in regards to that, and compared ideas and thoughts. And then I knew at that point that what I was able to do physiologically compared to other people was an absolute proven commodity. And I just been talking about that ever since, and wrote a number of books and programs on that. That was like the origins of biohacking back in the day that Matt and I were in when we started in 2004.
It was, I don't even know how you managed to, training that much and doing that stuff, how you even managed to eat food, or you must have been doing nothing else. There must have been that 3 weeks.
There was no other thing. There was no other thing going on in my life. I was also I was using a subliminal programming program developed by Dr. Lee Poulos, which is a 2-part. One is a subliminal program. One is a guided meditation that I would listen to every single day in a state. So I was creating a pristine environment in order for me to achieve those results. And of course I was. Also, that was 13 years ago, so I was 13 years younger than I am today. So that was also a benefit. And no drugs, no chemicals on any sorts, anything. And I was also, just on top of that, I was eating only a raw food diet.
Right.
So I was eating 85 grams of protein a day. That's all I needed to recover on that process. And I wanted to do it on a raw food diet because no one had done the world championships on a raw food diet. So I said, well, no, let's throw that in as well to really go for the gusto. Have you
got pictures of you before and after?
You must have. Unfortunately, I did have pictures before and after. They got damaged in a flood at my parents' house one time. And so I lost some of those pictures, but, that was the unfortunate part. This was before iPhones and cameras and digital media and all that stuff. So
how old were you then? 34?
Yeah, I was 34 years old at that time.
That's my age now. So it's interesting. I mean, what the body can do. I mean, I'd be interested to see. I mean, you're old now, but I'm interested to see what can be done. But it just shows the power of those enzymes and just flushing the body out of all the toxins coming in. But 10 liters is a lot as well, isn't it? Like for the average person.
Oh yeah, well, keep in mind, I'm training 3 workouts a day plus
Yeah.
5 rebounding sessions a day. I mean, I'm
yeah.
creating a lot of toxins, and for most people, 3 to 5 liters would be sufficient if they're athletic.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Wade, it's been absolutely fantastic talking to you. Have you got anything that you would like to add that you think people need to know?
Well, a couple of great things for people who are listening to this podcast and they want to find out more. They can check out my awesome health course. We give it away on the course. They can just go to bioptimzers.com and grab that. But I've got a special for people who are listening to this podcast. So if they go to bioptimzer.co.uk and type in Revive 15, they'll get 15% on any of our products. Keep in mind that all of our products have a 365-day guarantee that we will, if you try it for any reason you don't like it, we will return your money. And what we also said, we'll fix your digestion guarantee. Sometimes when people will try a product that's really not the right one, they can call our customer support line, and what we'll do is we'll ask them a few questions if that product didn't work for them, and say, hey, maybe this is the product. We'll actually send them out that product that we think will actually correct the condition. And if that doesn't work, they still get their money back. But 9 times out of 10, that fixes it, and we get that done. So basically, we take away all the risk. We back all their products. We don't believe that we've earned the right to have your dollars if we didn't fix the problem. So that's part of our message, and that's what's allowed us to be so successful over the last 15 years.
Awesome. And I think for listeners in the US and Canada, we've also got, because that was at your Revive site, that was at your UK site, Bioptimzers.
Yeah, for people.
Yes. Yeah, on the bioptimzers.com, I think we've also got Revive US 15,
yes.
15% off there. Awesome.
Yes.
But absolute pleasure talking to you, Wade. Definitely want to get you back on at a later date, but thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks so much, Ryan. And I just want to commend you and the work that you're doing. I went through all your website and looked it all out. And I think it's so great that you're focusing on digestion. The bottom line is we have a crisis of epic proportions. I mean, here in the US, we've got 12% of the population, 12% of the emergency hospital visits that are related to gastrointestinal issues, a third of the population suffering from digestive issues, a quarter of the population on prescription medication related to that. Then you have the whole antidepressants, which is people can't make the neurotransmitters from a messed up gut. And the bottom line is you can correct a lot of those things by fixing your digestion. So I want to thank you for spreading that message around. I really appreciate your work and appreciate what you do. So thanks, buddy. And anytime you want me back, I'm happy to help out.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, man. Thanks.
So there we have it. That was episode 144 with Wade Lightheart. And I must say, I'm absolutely privileged and humbled that I get to have these conversations with these fascinating people. It was a really fun conversation for me to have, and to speak to someone like Wade. I mean, all my guests are like that. They're just fantastic people, and yeah, I'm just really feeling lucky that I get to speak to these people and to share their message and share their knowledge, their wealth of information to you guys, so we can really start to make a big, long-lasting change in this world. And if you understand, as Wade said, and same as myself, that you don't have to live in pain. There is another way. You just have to come at things from a different perspective. And so, as Wade said there, we said before the show, he's offering you 15% off the products if you're in the UK, www.bioptimzers.co.uk. Put in the code REVIVE15, you get 15% off. And if you're anywhere else in the world, head on over to www.bioptimzers.net and put in the code REVIVEUS15. That's Revive US 15 for anywhere else in the world, and you'd be getting 15% off all their products. But yeah, it's fantastic to talking to Wade, and I definitely will be getting back on the show, and hopefully I even get to meet him this year, either in Venice Beach or in London, which would be great. And definitely be adding his products to our affiliate shop, because I want to be able to get the best products on the market out to you, as always. Also, as I mentioned before, my book is out, The Chronic Fatigue Solution. So if you've been dealing with a chronic health issue like chronic fatigue, or you just want to get yourself optimally healthy, because prevention is always better than cure, then you can head on over to www.reviveyourself. Head on over to www.thechronicfatiguesolution.com. That's www.thechronicfatiguesolution.com, where you can order your copy today, and we've got the audio version too if you prefer to listen rather than read. As I said before, it's £7 for the hardback copy, and I'm not making any money out of it. It's just literally postage and packaging and printing, and it gets shipped out to you. Because I want you to get this information out there. Also, as I said before, head on over to our shop at www.reviveyourself.co if you're looking for any of the best products on the market. And if you are dealing with a health issue and you're looking to overcome it and you haven't been able to get any relief and it keeps on reoccurring, then please send me an email at ryan@reviveyourself.co. That's ryan@reviveyourself.co, and we'll have a chat about how we can help you. And also, if you have bought the book, then do put a picture of yourself up reading it with the hashtag The Chronic Fatigue Solution. That's the Chronic Fatigue Solution hashtag on Facebook or Instagram for a chance to win our free 21-day health reset program. Okay, that's it for this week, guys and girls. As always, stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
If you're struggling with gut issues, such as gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, indigestion, heartburn, and want to finally be able to eat the foods you love without the crippling after effects, then don't forget to head over to reviveyourself.co and pick up your free copy of The Healing Health Paradigm today.